What's up, programmer? In this video, I'm going to be explaining nested loops in C++. So, what are nested loops? Nested loops are conditional loops that are placed inside another loop. Any loops that are inside another loop are called inner loops, and the loop on the outside is called the outer loop. Now, I'm going to show you how to create nested loops in C++. To create a nested loop, you first need to create a loop. You can create any loop you want, like a for loop or a while loop. In this example, I'm going to create a for loop. In this loop, I will create it so that the variable I starts at 0 and ends when the value is at 10, and the value is incremented by 1. Then I'm going to type some code inside this for loop. Now I'm going to create another loop that will be inside this for loop. This is what nested loops are, which is to have another loop inside a loop. For this inside loop, I will create a different for loop that will start with a different index variable. The most common variable name most programmers use for the inside for loop is the letter J. Then I will create the condition and the increment value. Now we have a for loop that is inside another for loop. This is how a nested loop will look like. How the nested loop will work is that the program will go through the inside loop first until it reaches the condition, and then when it's done, it will complete one iteration for the outer loop. In other words, the inside for loop will run until it's done, then the outside for loop will increment or decrement by the value that you have placed it in the outside for loop. And then the inside for loop will run again until it's done, repeating the process until the outside for loop reaches this condition. I am just going to change the conditions of both loops so that you can see the output a lot easier, but the process is still the same. When we run the program, you can see that the inner for loop ran for a total of 6 times and the outer for loop ran for a total of 2 times. This is because for the first iteration of the outer loop, the inner loop ran for 3 times, and the second iteration of the outer loop, the inner loop also ran for 3 times. If you wanted the index variables to be decreasing, you can also do it as well. Just like for one singular for loop, all you have to do is just change the values and the condition. It really depends on your program and how you want the for loops to run. In this example, I changed the I variable to start at 2 and end at 0 by decreasing by 1. For the inner for loop, I set the J variable to start at 3 and end at 0 by decreasing by 1. When we run the program, you can see that just like before, the inner for loop ran for a total of 6 times and the outer for loop ran for a total of 2 times. Comment down below if you found this video helpful so far or you have any questions you want to ask. Now I'm going to create a nested while loop. To create a nested while loop, the first thing you need to do is create a while loop. In this example, I have it so that the outer while loop ends before it reaches 2. Then I will have some code inside this outer while loop. After that, I will have another while loop that will be inside this while loop. I will have another variable. In this example, it will also be the letter J, and I will have it so that it ends before it reaches 3. Then I will also have some code inside this while loop. Now, just how a nested for loop works, the nested while loop works the same way. The inside while loop will run until it reaches the condition that you specified. Then the outside while loop will increment by the value you placed it in the outside while loop. One very important thing I want to mention is that you need to have a value that increments or decrements the variable value that you have for the condition. Otherwise, you will have a loop that will run infinitely. In this example, I have it so that both variables in the conditions increases by 1. So the X variable increases by 1 and the J variable increases by 1 as well. Another thing I want to mention is that for the increment or decrement values that you have for the variables, generally you should want to put them after you have your code. You should put them after the other code that you want to run. This makes it so that you don't accidentally increment a value for a variable before you can run the other code that you want to run. So when we run the program, you can see that the inner while loop ran for a total of 3 times and the outside while loop ran for a total of 2 times. The reason being is that the variables are being incremented by 1. So every time one of the while loops run, one of the variables being incremented and the variable value is not being set back to 0, just like you would have for a for loop. This is very important because for a for loop, every time you start a new loop in a for loop, usually the variable starts at 0, but for a while loop, depending on how you set up the conditions and the increment increment and decrement values, they either keep on increasing or decreasing until it reaches the condition. You can also have decreasing while loops as well. Just change the condition in the while loops and the value so that it decreases instead of increases. When we run the program, you can see that the inside while loop ran for 3 times and the outside while loop ran for 2 times, just like before when we increment the while loops instead of decrementing them. Additionally, if you are going to be using conditional loops like while loops, make sure you completely understand how to use for loops because they are just as important as while loops. I will demonstrate for loops in this video, so you want to go watch that video next. Anyways, this is Easy Syntax showing you programming made easy. Thank you for watching.